Good morning, I'm Carl with the Hondo Public Library. November is Indigenous Peoples Month, and today I'm going to be reading 3 stories from the folklore of the Hasinai tribe, also known as the Tejas tribe, a Caddoan people native to East Texas. The specific retellings of these stories were printed by Florence Stratton in her 1936 collection, Where the Storm God Rides, Tejas and Other Indian Folklore. Let's begin. Our first story is called The Maiden Who Loved a Star. There once was a young and beautiful girl who went from her home into the desert of the western country to gather there the purple ripe fruit of the prickly pear. She left the desert late one day after the sun had gone down, and when she set out for home, the bright stars were beginning to sparkle in the sky. One star was much brighter than the others and seemed closer to Earth. The maiden stopped in the sand and watched it. Was the star winking down at her? She dreamed of the shining star that night, and she saw in her dream that the star was the home of a fine, tall youth, a sky dweller. The next day, the maiden went again into the desert to gather the fruit of the prickly pear, and again she stayed until the sun had gone down behind the distant hills on the far edge of the desert, and she watched her star winking once more at her. For 7 days she visited the desert, and each night she dreamed of this fair young man. She dreamed that he spoke of his love to her, but he could not come down to the desert. She could not visit him in his star home. The maiden was full of love, but she was unhappy because she was so far away from her lover in the star-frosted sky. An old witch woman lived with the tribe, and the maiden went to her and asked how she might be taken up to the sky to live in the star with her lover. "Life is too great a gift to be flung aside," said the witch woman as she looked at the poor girl weeping. "You must live out the life the Great Spirit has given to you, but I can change you into a form that will permit you to live always under the loving smiles of the stars." She went with the witch woman upon the desert that night, and there the old woman made a powerful drink from the desert plants and told the maiden to drink it. As soon as she had done so, her feet began to take root in this dry, sandy soil. Her black hair turned into leaves, and the maiden had become a new shrub which no one had seen in the desert before. As the wind blew, the shrub seemed to murmur thanks to the witch woman. When the sky youth saw what had happened, he leaned far out of an opening in his star lodge. He leaned so far out that the edges of the star broke with his weight, and he fell with sparkling pieces of star straight towards the maiden who had become a bush. The starry bits were shattered to fine dust, and it powdered the leaves of the bush with white. The youth was changed to purple blossoms. At last the maiden and the sky youth were together. The bush with white-dusted leaves and beautiful blossoms became known as the Sinisa, or ash-covered bush. Today it is called purple sage. And now you know the story of how it came to be in the desert. Our second story is called Why Hummingbirds Drink Only Dew. Once, a hummingbird and a great blue heron owned a lake together. It was a long lake which ran through the low country for many miles. Around the edges of this lake were moss-covered trees and low bushes which hung over the water. In the shade made by the trees and the bushes, the hummingbird liked to hover and drink the cool water. Like many people, the hummingbird and the heron had a bad habit of gambling. They liked to bet about many things. One day the hummingbird bet the heron that he could fly from one end of their lake to the other faster than the heron. The one who lost the bet was to give up drinking in that lake and also in all others. The hummingbird thought he would surely win the race, for he could fly much faster than the big heron. They flew on and on. The heron was left far behind, but still the hummingbird was a long way from the other end of the lake. Finally it began to get dark, and the hummingbird could not fly in the darkness. At last he had to take a little rest and spend the night in a tree, but the heron could fly at night, and he kept coming after the sun went down. Early the next day, the hummingbird jumped out of his tree and started on his way again. He expected to reach the end of the lake long before the heron, but when he got there, the heron was already sitting in a cypress tree and laughing at him. The hummingbird kept his word and would never drink from that lake or any other lake or river again, and that is today why he sips nothing but dew. Our last story is called The Girls Who Ended a Drought. For many days, the tribe of Hasinai had suffered from a drought that threatened to never end. As the hot sun kept burning down through the cloudless sky, the grass dried up, berry bushes turned yellow and withered, the creeks ran dry, and the fish died. Animals fled from the country because there was no more water to be found. Something had to be done. The chief of the tribe called on the medicine man to ask for advice. Pointing to a high cliff, the medicine man told the chief that a great serpent, the chief of all the snakes, had his den in a cave at the foot of the cliff. This serpent, said the medicine man, would have to be fed some of the maidens of the tribe. Then the gods would send down the rain. As soon as they learned what the medicine man had said, 2 young girls hurried to the chief and begged him to let them be thrown over the cliff, so that the people could have water they needed. All Hasinai, including the girls, were taught to be willing to give up their lives, if need be, for the sake of the tribe. The chief was very sad to lose the maidens of the tribe, but he believed that this was the only way to break the drought. The medicine man lined them up at the edge. They looked over and became dizzy when they saw how far it was to the sharp, cruel rocks at the bottom. But the girls were brave. When the medicine man had finished his dance and his prayers, he raised his hand. Hand in hand, the girls jumped. The parents of the girls turned their faces away, for they could not bear to see their daughters die. A goddess who watched over them was looking down from the sky and took pity on them. Just before they reached the bottom of the cliff, she turned them into white flowering bushes which took root on the spot. As the snake chief, who had been looking up and waiting with an open mouth, saw this happen, he was afraid, for he knew that some power greater than himself had been at work. He hurried back to his dark cave, and as soon as he had gone away, the clouds, which had been afraid of his presence, now sailed back. Rain poured down from them, and the long drought was finally ended. The bushes continued to grow and spread in memory of the brave deed of long ago. Today we call these the bee brush or bush honeysuckle. They still grow in canyons and gulches all over central Texas and southward to the Rio Grande. In the spring, the plants are sought by hungry hummingbirds who sometimes nest in them. The bees come to gather honey from the flowers, and butterflies and moths hover over them. Perhaps these small creatures know the story of the sweet-smelling bush and stop to thank the girls for their sacrifice. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next month for our next chapter of Monday Memories.